Instagram. We are pretty much live on Facebook. All right, we're here. Amazing. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I am so excited to be here. It is Wednesday. Wednesday is a really special day because every week we get to explore different topics that relate to work-life boundaries and health and well-being. And so today is a really special month because we're kicking off boundaries. And so I get this comment a lot of like, how do I create boundaries? How do I start to set a boundary? What do boundaries even mean? So we're going to go into the nuances of boundaries because they're so important to our well-being. And so before we go any further, let me introduce myself. My name is Baptiste, and I'm an executive wellness coach, and I am the founder of Akaloa Wellness. My firm works with ambitious, empowered, inspired, hardworking, kick-ass individuals just like you, and gives you the tools and the techniques and the mindset shifts to be successful. And so I've been in corporate for over 10 years, so I've definitely experienced what it's like to work a lot, to get spread really thin, and to have to work with the hurdles that we deal with in everyday life. And so the one thing that comes up over and over and over again is this idea that I give to everyone else, I show up for everything I need to, but the one thing that I'm not showing up for is myself. And so today that all changes. Today we start to shift that. And it comes with this idea of boundaries. And so sometimes we have to first even understand, do we have boundaries? What are our boundaries? And really boundaries, I like to think of as just space between me and something else. And so for some of us, right, we may have really easy boundaries of, okay, I need to be in bed before midnight, or I'm not gonna smoke, or I'm not going to, who knows what the boundary is, but the thing that you commit to that I'm not going to do. But sometimes, right, we notice that boundaries can get blurred. And so often it's with time and it's in our relationships. And so we're going to explore those two specifically because it's the relationships with others that can all of a sudden, my strong boundary starts to crumble and it starts to come down. And then with time, there's only 24 hours and there's so much that needs to be done. And usually the thing that gets sacrificed is my own well-being. So how does that sound? I would love to get your feedback. Feel free to add in the chat. Does this resonate with you? How, what do boundaries mean to you? I would love to know. And we're checking on Zoom and on Instagram, on Facebook. So feel free to just use the chat board to share what boundaries really mean for you. All right, and so while everybody is sharing, what I want to do is give you a few techniques that you can consider as you're starting to even understand where your boundaries are, what your boundaries may even be. And so the really easy way to start with boundaries is to start with the things that are non-negotiable in your life. So for example, if you have children, a boundary that may be non-negotiable is showing up for them. And the boundary is I make sure that I protect my kids and I am taking care of my family. But where the boundary might get broken is when I'm 100% taking care of my family, but then all of a sudden that I don't eat or I'm just eating the leftovers off of their plate because I didn't have time to make myself a real meal. And so that's one idea of like the boundary of then taking care of yourself. So knowing firstly, listing out what is non-negotiable in your life. And so whether it is, I need a career that fulfills me, whether it is, I need to go to the gym once a week, whether it is, I need to take my dog out for a walk, right? And some boundaries in some ways can sound like responsibilities, but it's the things that we show up for without questioning like our morals, because we know that it's so inherently us that we are dedicated to that. So that is the one thing. So it's starting with what is non-negotiable in my life and knowing that if those things are so important to you, then we have to create a boundary around that. So I'm saying the word boundary a lot, so stay with me. But here, let's talk about it even if we're staying in that family realm, right? What's non-negotiable is that I show up for my family. But the boundary is then, how do I make sure that there's enough space between me and my family so that I can not only show up for them, but I can show up for myself in the best way? And so this is where we start to shift. If we notice that there's always this pattern that I'm always last and all the other needs come before my own well-being, then it starts to have a cumulative effect. So now, once we know what our boundaries are, or our non-negotiables are, then we need to start to define that space in between. So give me a thumbs up, a yes, a smiley face. Let me know if this resonates, because I want to make sure that I'm with you and I'm not running too far ahead. But let's keep going. So in this space between knowing that my family is important and that they're non-negotiable in my life, and then starting to carve out that time for me, or that space for me, what's really important is that I, again, define what I need to be successful so that I can put my family first, or put it, make sure that's a non-negotiable in my life. So for example, to show up, and staying with this example for family, I may need a certain amount of sleep every single night in order to really do the things that I need to and that I want to be with my family, or to show up for my job. And so this is where we start to think of, what are the elements? What are the few things, maybe even the one thing that you need to start to set that boundary? And so when I'm working with individuals for the first time, I always like to start with, when we're thinking about boundaries, and maybe for some of us, I'm like, I've never explored boundaries, or I feel like I'm always getting taken advantage of and I can never find that space. It's really important to start to think, okay, well, what do I need to make sure that I can show up best for the world? And once I know what those few things are, and it has to be specific, then you start to get better. Then you start to notice, right? If I know that I have to sleep 8 hours a day to show up, again, for my family, which is so important to me, then I need to make sure that I'm getting enough rest. And then that becomes a non-negotiable. Then that becomes something that I will not allow someone to break that wall, break that protective layer, because I need that in order to be successful. And so this is a really important to think about, right? So we're focusing on the idea of time and the idea of relationships as it comes to boundaries. So we're getting some nice feedback here that I'm getting. So I will read that momentarily. But I also want to just bring it to reality, right? This idea of boundaries and how do I protect myself? And maybe some of us have even heard of this idea of energy leaks, of just there's this one area, this one part of my life that always seems to get interrupted. And it starts to kind of fluff me out, where I get all worked up because it's not serving me. And so I want to even bring up the example that all of my Zoomers here who have been with me the past few weeks have experienced, which is even this boundary of our sacred space getting infiltrated. Our Zoom squad has gotten Zoom bombed twice now. And so when that happened, I realized that there is a leak, that there needs to be a stronger boundary, a stronger wall protecting us from the outside world. So in a really clear way, how did I do this? What I did was I started to talk to my team. And now my team is part of this, and they're helping me coordinate in the back end. So now there's not as much juggling. There's a really clear process in place where we change our password weekly, where we make sure that we're locking the meeting after a few minutes, where we're making sure that we're staying safe. And so it's because of these little things, this process, these fixes, right? It starts to hold my wall together. It creates this boundary so we stay safe. So the boundaries are always part of us, right? That's why even in coronavirus, our boundaries were wearing masks. And so there's always this relationship with space and getting infiltrated and keeping my space and my protection and my safety, right? Whether it's health and well-being with coronavirus or whether it's with a boss that calls you on Saturday morning, right? It's understanding then what is my safety. And so what I love, and in the comments, I got an ask to share best practices, and we're going to go through that more so next week and really clear ways to once we identify the boundaries, which is the purpose of today's session, then we can start to understand and hold them so that they are non-negotiable in our life. Because it's in that place where we hold our boundaries so dear that we start to feel better. And I promise you, it will feel better, but it may be hard to start. And so right now, taking the next week, right, we do these little chunks just to reflect, to think about it, is to really think about what you need to be successful. Because a lot of times I'll hear, well, this person, right, we take this kind of victim mentality of like, this person, it keeps calling me and this person keeps affecting me and I can't, they're the ones that are infiltrating my boundary. But that means is our wall is not strong enough. That means we need to reinforce our protection, reinforce what we need to be successful. And so we're going to go there. We're going to talk about how to stay disciplined, how to stay accountable, what we can do to thrive in it, and then even understand when we have it hit a hiccup, how to work through that. So we are going to go there. But right now, let's keep it really simple. So just for this week, list out the things that are non-negotiable in your life. Identify in your second list of the things that seem to always get in the way, the things that continue to be a distraction, the things that continue to upset you, the things that continue to leak your energy. There's this idea of even the mind, right? If we don't put a boundary on the senses of what we're watching on TV or what we're experiencing in our life, then all of a sudden, like anything can just come in and infiltrate and distract us from our greatest potential. So this is really important. We're starting something new. This is the first month that we're really going into the mental mindset. And so next week, we're going to talk about the physical ways to calm the mind, to set the barrier, to do all of that, right? To make your fortress impenetrable. But for now, do this work. Sit with yourself for 20 minutes if you have, 5 minutes if you have. But really, the more you can invest your time in exploring these, then you can start to find a solution to make sure that you are protected, that your boundary is impenetrable. And so that's where I want to start today. And so I invite you to kind of share with me what you're thinking, if there's something on your mind as it comes to it of like, oh, I never realized that my greatest distractions are, right? And if you're watching this on the replay, you can do even #replay and you can share your feedback and I'll follow up with you because I know that you're experiencing something. We're all experiencing these different types of leaks. And if we don't clog that hole and protect ourselves, then that's where vulnerability comes. That's when we don't take risks because we don't feel safe. So this is critical. This is critical in our well-being. And this is so related to our physical health. This is incredibly related to how we show up at our jobs, how we show up in our partnerships, how we live life. So don't underestimate this boundary. And if it feels so ambiguous, so out there, like I just don't even know where to begin because I hear that often. Start with the lists and make it really clear on those things that you're not willing to budge for. And then that second list of what seems to keep pulling from you. And so that's it for today. We'll keep it simple with those 2 lists and this big idea of how you can start to feel better by exerting a boundary. So I would love to connect with you. I have a lot going on, but I would just love to hear from you. If there's something that you want to explore personally, feel free to reach out to me. My email is lauren@akaloawellness.com. And we do this every single Wednesday. We join and we discuss different topics. And so for the next few sessions, we're going to specifically go into boundaries because this is really important. It's the mental stuff that really sets the path for our physical well-being. And so sometimes we kind of have to go into the opposite way because we're not ready to tap in. But this group is ready. You guys are consistent. You've been here weeks over weeks, month over month, right? So I want to start to give you these nuggets to start to work on. All right. Well, this is the magic. Feel free to reach out to me. I have a ton going on, so stay connected. Join my newsletter. If you want to share this with someone who you know who's maybe experiencing some energy leaks, you just feel it in their well-being, send them this. Send it to somebody you love. All right, guys, wishing you an incredible week ahead. I am here for you on your journey, so don't hesitate to connect if I can support you. Wishing you a great rest of your Wednesday. Talk to you soon. See you later. Bye.